right.
Give another round of applause for Joel, everybody.
Joel.
We're really excited. We're comedians, so this is a little bit earlier than we like to be talking
We were
to
shocked.
people.
We were like, who's going to be there this early in the day?
A little bit less alcohol in you than we
Incredible.
prefer, but hopefully.
Some of you are drunk.
We're excited. Some of you.
Who's drunk? Anyway.
This is us. We were excited when he asked about honesty because we do like to think that our work it's satire and it's parody, but that can only be funny if there's some sort of truth involved, which is why when you see a really good joke that's about you, obviously, it hurts.
It stings. Gets you right in the heart.
It stings. So let's just get started. Let's see. So, honesty through satire, parody, and comedy. We did write Handmaid's Tale the musical.
Yes, we did.
Because we saw the show, we read the book, and we were like, yes, but more camp.
Little dancing, you know? It's so heavy.
No dancing.
Razzle dazzle, you know?
I don't understand. And we were watching the show, and we sort of thought about how literally everything has become a musical.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob.
Spider-Man several times.
They killed numerous people for Spider-Man to be on Broadway. That's true.
Death.
So we started thinking, why not Handmaids? And especially in this time that we're living in, a lot of us we felt really, for lack of a better words, impotent with everything that's going on. You sort of hit a wall, you do what you can. I write like postcards to voters, I don't know, but.
Doesn't work, we don't know.
I try, but.
We wanted to do something cathartic.
Yeah.
That felt productive.
We wanted to sort of do something that could make us laugh while also maybe getting at some truths, but not escaping us as as part of the joke.
Yes.
So we wrote Handmaid's Tale the musical, because we stopped being fun at parties.
Nobody wanted to be around us because we were just talking about things.
Even before Trump was elected, it was getting there for me. You're kind of at parties sometimes. I'm angry. People will be like, yeah, so I was actually thinking. You're like, thanks. That reminds me of child abuse. Thank you for bringing that up.
Everyone just goes to the bathroom after they have a conversation with Marcia.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my God,
yeah.
Calm down.
You can tell from the look on their face. They're like, So we were like, okay, how can we fix this?
Because you need to talk about it, you need to discuss these things, but living in it all the time gets very heavy.
It's brutal.
Very taxing.
So we
need some
wrote,
expression.
last December, or November, Melissa and I had this idea to do Handmaid's Tale the musical. We have been working on a Fiddler on the Roof parody, but we tabled it. Because we felt like this was sort of more poignant.
That's evergreen. We can do that whenever,
Fiddler is, always evergreen. So in the show, Melissa plays Rory Gilmore, who is the narrator.
That part's not political. That was just like, we can't watch this show without thinking that they did this to Rory,
It's very triggering because you're looking at your middle school hero.
And where's Lorelai throughout all of it? You're just like, she misses her.
Yes.
Like everyone in Stars Hollow is very worried about her, so we just that was more just for me to get that out.
She went to Yale. The Rory Gilmore character, Alexis Bledel's character, is like a doctor or something. It all makes sense.
No one knows
so
what she is on the show.
Once we started to realize that Handmaid's Tale was sort of a sequel to Gilmore Girls, it just kind of took off from there. And in our show, because we wanted to lighten it up, because we'll get into it later, but a huge part of honesty in comedy for us is not just what you find funny, but also what you don't find funny. You don't have to find everything funny. There's this idea of as women comedians, our whole early career, people would be like, you have a stick up your ass. And it's like, no, your joke just sucked.
Yeah.
So I play Offred, whose name is June, and in the show, obviously, it's dark. There are kids involved, a lot of rape. We were like,
none of that.
So
none of it.
We decided to make it more of a cliche musical where June is your typical Broadway heroine who moves to New York City to pursue her dream of becoming a barista, and
staying a barista.
And staying
forever.
a barista for the rest of her life. So she moves to New York, only in our story, she becomes a handmaid. And we wanted to see what we could talk about with our lives in Brooklyn through this parody that takes place 10 years in the future, what sort of truths we could get at.
It's not difficult to make fun of Brooklyn.
It's not.
It's pretty easy to imagine it happening there.
So part of why we started to tell our truth through comedy is because it wasn't heard before. Especially, I've been doing comedy for 10 years, And as when I first started especially, and it was a lot more of a boys' club, I would get a lot of stop complaining, make it funny. Anytime you bring up any problems, and now I realize that's bullshit. But it did.
They don't like the joke either.
That's the thing. They're like, stop complaining, make it funny. You make it funny. They're like, I actually meant shut up. So, but that's what we decided to do. That's where our comedy sort of took us, is trying to get that point of view out there. And honesty in comedy is really all about having a strong point of view. And it's about creating what truth you want to be reflected and what you want to be heard. So with our show in particular, do you want to talk about the...
Sure. I mean, you're just kind of seeing these false truths everywhere. And the only way to really shine light and hold a mirror to that is to mock it openly, you know, to kind of take it out of that context and put it in a different context so you can see the true ridiculousness behind kind of the truths that we're being told.
Yeah, and to show as opposed to tell. So what we're seeing, and what we've always seen in a way, but now we're seeing on a massive scale, is huge amounts of gaslighting by the people in power, which is telling us to accept their version of truth, and anybody with a brain is like, I can't, you're ridiculous. Right. So we wanted to use our show to poke fun of those things in a way that they might not be heard if you're just explaining it on the nose. You know, you can say Trump's a liar 100 times, but people have stopped listening to it. And there's
kind of a digestibility through humor in particular. I mean, I don't know why we look to comedians for that. I mean, we're all idiots, but, you know, comedy has, for whatever reason, been a really, you know, effective way to do that.
It is. Well, and that's why comedy really scares people in power, because if somebody makes a joke and an audience connects with it, there's some truth there. And that truth is being shared by everybody who's laughing at it. So in our show, when we talk about Aunt Betsy DeVos,
we just love knowing the Google alerts that she's getting. Like every time our show gets written up, I'm like, you know.
Oh, she got the Google alerts. Yes, she did. Aunt Betsy DeVos was the most fun character we've ever written because we wrote it for our friend Eudora. Our friend Eudora is a wonderful actress. And she took it and made the part wonderful because we were watching Betsy DeVos, and it just grows so frustrating to see somebody with a glassy, breakable smile being like, of course public schools are terrible, you know. So we wanted to poke fun and to get at some of that gaslighting because she wants us to just accept whatever she says. That's what the whole administration is about. And through this, we've had a lot of people be like, well, let's just say Aunt Betsy DeVos knows about the show. So this is a clip from our show. This is Betsy DeVos's song, just to give you an idea sort of what we're talking about.
And this is the training center.
This is the training center if you've ever watched the Hulu show.
I want to sit by Moira. That's my friend.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I would honestly like to sit over there.
All right, let's sit. I'm good. Just have a seat. It's fine.
Sit.
It's good. Do you all know each other? Oh no, Momo, they caught you?
June, shut up. The eyes are watching.
Private eye is watching you. Do you remember that song?
June. You know what? I don't want to say I told you so, but look where we are.
Okay, so maybe don't, you know? Gosh, it's not like I didn't believe you, Rah-Rah. It's just, I don't think there's anything wrong with being positive. I mean, obviously what they're doing to women is awful.
I'm lucky to even be here. They're eliminating the LGBT community as we speak.
Okay, I guess I'm just trying to find how what I said undermined that in any way and why you would even like bring that up, because I don't even know if you notice that you do this, but like every single time I say anything,
what?
You always act like I'm like, what thing? You're doing the thing because you always act like I'm homophobic.
The thing where you make it a...
And I'm not homophobic, Moira. I'm not homophobic.
Okay, you know, I don't even know how to explain it, okay? But it's just the thing. Oh, who the fuck is that?
Oh, hi, I work for Vice. Vice rules. This place, like, sucks. What? What? Ow, what the? What the?
It's this.
Oh my god.
Silence.
What?
but you may call me Aunt Betsy. Hit it. I'm Betsy DeVos. I talk out my us, and my husband's name is Dick. Yes, really. Oh, I just blow the pour, so humble and demure. It makes me want to gag, go away, sir. I'm Betsy DeVos. Public schools are for the trash, but every child over 5 should have a gun, bearer tax. And now look where I am, in charge of the woman. Am I human? I assume I was born one. I'm Betsy DeVos. You could say that I'm corrupt, but as a Christian, I do what I feel is right. With God on my side and a tax-free ride, I'll fight for every kitty who is white. I'm Betsy DeVos. If bread was my loss, all your booze make me laugh. The only food I eat is glass. There's some. Yeah. I'll break it. Damn. Draw those Pilates. I'm the elegant, smiling, discrimination denying, a Betsy DeVos. Every child left behind.
That was a little bit. So these are the words. If you want to just take a quick look at them, if it was hard to hear. Honestly, writing that was very rewarding for us.
I would say so.
It got out so much anger at her, at everyone.
Yep.
My favorite is every child left behind.
Yeah.
Because that's her be best. So we wanted to talk about that gaslighting process and how it can just be a really cathartic relief to connect with other people. It's socially validating when you guys laugh, because then we know that we're sharing this idea that this woman is irredeemably horrible.
Yep.
Oh, so this is, in our show, Betsy DeVos is a lizard person. So
Let's see how
at one
it's
point we
passed
show
down.
her lizard family tree. Where it just, you can see all the different families of lizard eventually getting down to the Secretary of Education for our Imperial Emperor, Betsy DeVos. And this is honestly just truth scientifically. So
We found this on the internet. We didn't even make this.
we didn't even make
was just
this.
out
Yeah,
there.
we have a couple scientist
public
friends
record.
at John Hopkins over here. So now another part of our show is Commander Fred and the men's rights activists.
Which I will just say, Marcia is trolled on Twitter in a way that I have not experienced before. It's insane.
Super fun.
I mean, every once in a while she'll retweet me and I'll get like a day of it and I'm like, oh my God. And like, it's her daily life. These
Yes.
people just dedicate themselves to like, you know, and it's not comforting knowing that our entire career is based on telling people where we're gonna be and at what time and like trying to get them to come. So it's like,
That's nice. That's nice
I'm
about it.
constantly like, don't worry, no one's gonna.
Well,
you
and
know.
this is part of like our idea too with honesty, is that I can tweet back at every single person who trolls me anonymously on the internet, and
not
it's not going to
recommended.
do anything. But if I can group their collective behavior and reflect it back to people where they can see what's going on and laugh at how ridiculous these men are, then that gives me power back, and that takes away from them. So we have some examples of some of the trolls. This is my favorite. 30 years, that's 10,766 days of having the same loving pussy all the time, which we looked it up. That's not how many days
not
are in
the math.
30 years. It's
It was a whole, like, word problem.
10,950 days. Yeah, I'm like, he did math and he did
if
it
he's
wrong.
traveling at 55 miles
He
per
didn't
hour,
even Google
how
it.
many pussies
Well,
do you
and
got?
also,
Yeah.
when did you start hating men? Was it when men started ignoring you? Actually, it was a beautiful autumn's day. It was October the 2nd.
1997.
So this is just like an idea, and you know what? They're almost always anonymous, and that's the thing. They're always these anonymous trolls, and it builds up. It builds up. You can't always ignore it. And let's see, we had, oh, that's my favorite. I'm just waiting for Hungry Man Dinners to rebrand to Hungry Person because 2018 ain't done yet.
Good
Yeah,
luck. Good luck to him.
2018 has been a really hard year for men. Definitely, definitely, definitely. We have a Louis C.K. fan over there. It'd probably be different if a gay guy was jacking off on me, but if a woman did it, I'd hardly be offended. Cool. So, would love to test that theory.
This was
Someone
kind of a
sharpening
different...
a pencil over there? Okay. So with the men's rights song, we wrote a song. We don't have the song, but we wrote a song called Freedom of Speech. And it's basically about how freedom of speech being this idea that you can just say whatever you want without consequences, and how you should be able to talk and women should be forced to listen, but you shouldn't have to listen to women, which is really important.
And the WNBA, definitely putting that down as well.
And the WNBA should be illegal.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the rights these men are fighting for. And
we
again,
do represent the good men, too.
We do.
There are
In the
good
show,
guys.
we have extremely hot Nick,
Which I think everyone could agree was very distracting in the show.
I'm sorry. Something about the shadow work on that guy is just like, Offred's kind of like, I'm not even mad anymore,
It's completely fine that I'm here. But they're all fans of Fish, the band,
So
the
extremely
jam
hot Nick
band.
chases Fish the band around the country, and Offred's kind of like, why aren't you helping the women? And he's like, we are helping, we're jamming.
Jamming is helping.
And so then tragedy strikes Fish the band, and we see Nick really go through it, and we go into our Les Mis parody, Fish the band I used to love. Going in eventually to Do You Hear Fish the Band Sing? Which is my favorite song in the show.
It's really beautiful.
But so we wanted to parody the dynamics of the men, both the men who are actively hurting and the men who are, God bless them, trying. And obviously that's not all, I'm not going to say not all men. You guys can live with it. So you guys can deal with it. Look,
I have to deal with
you're fine. So these are these bigger ideas of power, both the people who don't have power, anonymous losers yelling on the internet, or this guy who's verified, who really is concerned about Hungry Man being rebranded. And we wanted also to get into cathartic parody on large and small. So we have Fred as the commander, and then his wife is Serena Joy, which in the show, she's like, what did Michelle Wolf call Sarah Huckabee Sanders? White Lady Uncle Tom?
Yeah.
That's basically Serena Joy's character.
So it's kind of like these weird power dynamics that you experience in like everyday life, where you're like, I know that if something bad happened, like this woman is not on my side. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can't say that because you're like employed by her.
Yeah.
So.
We both worked in like food service and jobs like that for so long. And you work for these women in Brooklyn, in New York, and it's these sort of like liberal women. And you just know that when push came to shove, they would be like, bye. So we wanted to parody that. And Serena Joy, she has a song called Independent Self-Care Woman, where basically all these women are like doing her nails and stuff. And she's like, I'm an independent woman. And it's like, you have help.
Yeah.
So with that too, like, yeah, we get to be honest there in ways that we can't be in our real life.
Right.
We can't, I've worked for so many people where they want to just hold you hostage with like their like anecdotes and
With
like
small
stories.
talk alone, yeah,
Small
will murder
talk,
you.
And in our show, Serena Joy's big struggle is that she's an empath. And
She feels.
you
so
know,
much.
strongly. So she really feels for Offred. She won't do anything about it, but she does feel. Feel like I'm hitting a little too close to home here. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, this is Serena and Offred doing yoga. So you get an idea about the honesty that our show is trying to get at.
Some would say too honest.
Yes.
maybe.
Well, and it's funny too. I love being at the Benson Ball because we don't have to like disclaimer our show like it's feminist, you know. People just come, and it's interesting. In some audiences we've had really good luck, but it's definitely, I think it's good to have a stacked audience who knows the show and feminism. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Honesty in comedy also includes what we don't find funny. We cut the rape stuff, a lot of it. I mean, we make a couple jokes about it, but you can choose. I think a lot of people can take that power back, punching up versus punching down. But in terms of the power that comedy has, that's why punching down can be so harmful, is that if you're punching up and everybody in the audience is sharing a laugh over the people who have power, that takes away some of their power. If you're punching down and you're laughing at the people who are already powerless, then the whole audience is laughing at a truth that already oppresses them. So it's not like it's illegal. I'm not saying you can't tell your rape joke. I'm saying I'm allowed to call you an asshole, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I've always said. People are like, don't censor me. Nobody's
I'm not censoring you.
you.
I'm just not laughing at your
I'm just
awful
saying
fucking joke.
you're dumb.
Yeah.
Which is my freedom of speech. They never want to acknowledge that. And it can be about what you don't find funny. And that was a big learning lesson in comedy for me. It doesn't have to be what you find funny. It can also be what you don't find funny. And yeah, you'll be called out to be like a humorless, you know, bitch or whatever, like just for being like, actually, I've heard rape jokes that are funny and yours isn't one. I'm thinking about someone so specific. That's why that came out so angry. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay, so then we get into like this idea of who gets to tell the truth, who gets the jokes, and that's where you have the gatekeepers and things like that. We're so lucky that we've gotten to do this show. We've self-funded it. We've self-produced it. We did it because we just did it. We just executed it. And I think for most performers, that's how it ends up being, because the gatekeepers don't want something that's
when you guys have
too
heard
honest.
what's going on in the comedy world right now. So functioning in it and within the industry is kind of this whole clusterfuck that we just don't even know how to navigate, kind of. It's like a crazy. So yeah, we're very lucky to be kind of self-contained.
Louis C.K. is back. Welcome back. So happy to have you. So we got to use this show to both comment on what we find funny and what we don't find funny, and use it to kind of poke fun at that. And that's our choice, because that's our point of view. And people can deny, you know, people can disagree with you, but in terms of comedy, if your point of view is honest and people are connecting with it, they kind of can't take that away from you. Oh, yes. So this is, then we start to get into, so
Marcia
everyone
has
wants
a
to
band.
talk, I'm in a band. Everyone wants to talk about like PC culture and like things like that. Then I write a song called All Older White Men Should Die, But Not My Dad.
He's a lovely man, truly.
Martin Belsky.
Should be saved.
And these same men are silent. Nobody comes to my defense. And so that's where it gets interesting to me, because it's all about who gets to tell the truth and who gets to tell their version of truth and have it heard, and who doesn't. And that's the thing, is that people are fighting for these edgy jokes on TV. That's fine. No one's going to let me tell that joke on TV, even though it's hilarious. So then we get into my project, The Headless Women of Hollywood. And this is where we'll round out and tie everything together. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this project, but I started it 2 years ago, and it's about objectification of women on Hollywood and TV movie posters and some advertisements as well. And this is where, like our show, I've realized that I find the most power in showing as opposed to telling. I think I learned an unfortunate lesson that people don't listen to us, and I can be very shrill, very loud, and still they do not listen. And so then there was this thing that I noticed. I had a teacher point out to me when I was in school, an advertising trope where they cut off women's heads in movie posters in order to better sexually objectify them, basically. And the project seeks to bring attention to this practice of fragmenting and fetishizing and dehumanizing the images of women, because we're so numb to women's bodies just being relegated to the background of male action and only there to support male-centered plot. And then this was really, you can say that to people. People go, yeah, I guess. I know Hollywood's super sexist. But seeing is believing. And I would point out all of these different ads anytime I saw them on the subway. And when they're individual, people would always go, yeah, I guess that's a thing. And I have heard about the male gaze. And then you show them this, you know, which is just literally male gaze and the woman being there only to be looked at. You cut off her eyes, you cut off her humanity, she becomes interchangeable. And the goal is, of course, to make women feel like we should have an ideal body whose only reward, once it's achieved, is to become interchangeable for men. Remember how it was funny earlier? I swear. So this, to me, just proved and showed the male gaze. And if you go through the actual site, which is just headlesswomenofhollywood.com, there's just hundreds and hundreds of these images that you can scroll through. And then here you can see the difference in men versus women on these very specific posters. So these men's faces are centered. Men are always gazing out. Men are always looking. Women are always to be looked at. And that's the quality that we're taught from a very young age, is to carry ourselves as if we're being looked at by men all the time, and to keep that in mind. And they make her a passive object inherently by taking her face out. And again, you can say all these things to people, but they don't believe it to be true until you're showing it to them. And I would put little like funny captions so that like when it was like blowing up, everybody just wants the clickbait. That's the thing. So it's like if you're trying to get something heard by people, you have to think about the way that Refinery 29 is going to be like, this badass blog, like, you
Top
know.
5 ways this blog is showing you.
And this one I felt was just really telling, because this is a movie called Confidence, and Rachel Weisz is an incredible actress.
An amazing actress.
I think
Why would she?
No, this is Alice Eve in this one. So there's a couple actually headless ones with Rachel Weisz, which is what's sad. If you think about even The Graduate, obviously that's an iconic scene, but Dustin Hoffman was an unknown actor, and he is centered as opposed to the Oscar winner. So here we have the player, the king, the law, the bait. And the thing about the bait is she can't be a person. They have to take out her eyes, because if she's looking back, even if it's subconscious, whoever is consuming the image has to, in some ways, morally
Acknowledge her as a human.
Exactly, and deal with the fact that she's being objectified. These are my favorite posters. So a lot of people tell me, oh, it's a Bond parody. So these are the famous Bond legs that were in the Bond movie. And this image itself is used time and time again in spy movies, where it's Austin Powers, they do a parody of it. And people always want to act like I don't know that this is a trope. I do know that it's a trope, but a trope that is reappropriating objectification is not commenting on the objectification in itself. It's just reusing it. And these men really think that I've never seen a goddamn movie. I mean, it's crazy. No. So this one I love, because if you've ever seen The Kingsman, which I actually really liked until the very end, where she's like,
I didn't see that.
if you've seen it, it's this great movie. It's not even that sexist. And then at the very end, this blonde woman goes, you can put in butt if you want. What? Oh my God. What the fuck is wrong with you? So this is funny, because this actually happened 3 or 4 times on the blog if you look through. So there's 2 female characters in the movie. One of them is a blonde spy who's not represented in these posters at all. The other is Knife Legs, who is half there, I guess. Like, I don't know if her mom's gonna be like, that's my daughter, kind of. So I love this because all 3 of the men get a poster. The woman doesn't, but guess who does? The dog. The dog gets center frame. And literally all the men underneath her legs. This is just, honestly, I think this is just a metaphor for society. Like, people treat their dogs and men better than their knife legs. So, women as background for male-centered action and comedy. As comedians, one of the reasons why we do our shows and we put it in women, mostly women, and we do cast our shows diverse because it's easy and there's no reason not to. There's no reason not to. It's just, it's so easy to do. And especially if you're doing a broad, if you're supposed to be doing something that's representative of multiple experiences, if your show is not diverse, it's not honest. It's not good. So people get all like, people are like, I'm scared that Twitter is gonna come after me. Just don't suck then. So this really shows, in male comedies, especially growing up, I just remember feeling like I don't have a place. You're literally either the wife or the butt. That's how I phrase it. You're either the bitchy wife who wants to keep the man from the butt,
American Pie.
or or you're the butt herself.
You're the butt. You're the wife.
And I don't know what's better to be.
But
And what's interesting about these posters is that a lot of times when you look at all of the posters they make, the original poster is just these men. And then they CGI Photoshop in these completely synthetic women. I think some of these times these are models that are actually paid less, because you do get paid less when your head's not in the image.
If you're, I mean, Getty Images, possibly. We don't know.
I mean, this
Who
could
knows where
be
they
a
got
stock
this?
photo, absolutely. And it just shows you how we just accept, without even thinking of it, that men are at the center of the comedy and the women are there as sexual props to disappear as soon as they're not needed. And we see that over and over and over again. And these posters represent that visually. And so, I feel like my whole life I've just been telling people comedies are sexist, and they're like, no.
And then it makes it difficult for people to accept female comedy because this is the roles they've seen women in comedies for as long as they can make them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's an interesting story. Oh, these are the worst. So this is literally a car on her face. I mean,
Is he thinking he's having sex with the car? Is that what he wants?
We are deeply
I need this
concerned
on
for
your
you,
face.
men.
It's the only way he can get off.
And this is just he
Puts a
has
car
to
over
fuck
her
a car. Actually, it's a condition, but so. And this poster really just visually represents, because again, I can describe all the theory behind the blog, but that is not what made it go viral. What made it go viral is just the images themselves become undeniable as truth, because how can you deny it when they're right there?
The trolls also help it go viral, which is cool of them. They
That
don't
is
mean it,
true.
but them sharing it and death threatening
Oh my God, this one guy
Marcia
was-
really helps the numbers.
This one guy replied to the Twitter moment, and he was like, thanks for the jerk-off material. I'm going to be busy all day. I was like, you're on the internet. There is... If you're
Gosh,
jerking
so
off
much
to
to
movie
explore.
posters, you have more problems than me. But this is just really the male gaze in itself. The woman, it's not the same as a sexualized woman. That's the thing. We have been taught that our sexual beings are just these different fragmented parts that don't matter as a whole, and that our pleasure doesn't matter, because in these photos, our desire is not even part of the equation. It's not just ignored, it's not even there. The question of what she might be enjoying isn't there because her face isn't there. And all you know is these men like looking at her fully clothed, which you always see a lot. Fully clothed men, completely naked women. That's fine in your privacy. Just kidding. And these are just more just to sort of prove how many of these there are. I love this one because his girl, his mother, his choice. Like, which one are you gonna fuck, John Candy? Your mom or the girl? Which one? And this is actually the one that I saw on the subway that started the whole project. Because again, this is something that a professor had pointed out to me, but then I would see them everywhere. And this image made me so mad that I was like, I have to search through every movie and TV database to find every image like this. Because in the show, they are 3 equal stars. And this was every poster that was on the subway. She is just a leather-clad, sexualized leg. Because there are headless posters where the woman's not sexualized. That's not part of my project. There are gonna be, a lot of people send me headless posters that's not part of the project. And also, if you're looking at advertisement, you could argue that like capitalism has its own headless problem, but unless it's like a sexualized,
Objective
catalog ad, then that's not really what I'm getting at here. I mean, the heartbreak hit, that woman's legs, that's the thing, is these stars are also taken away from their posters. That the woman in this movie is like you would recognize her. She's like a pretty famous blonde comedian who's like been in a bunch of stuff. Okay, so this is an interesting story that I'll wrap up with. So this is about a movie called Balls Out, also known as Intramural. So this was the original poster for the movie. This was an indie film that the guy who made it contacted me. His name's Bradley Jackson. And I heard about this because it was the poster you'll see in a minute was one of the first posters I found. And he contacted me and he said, I made this movie. It got hijacked by the studio. I was really embarrassed. And I'd love to talk to your blog about it. He was a nice guy. And so this is the epic sports movie for the guys who don't deserve one. It's a really funny comedy. If I saw this poster, I would see it. Kate McKinnon stars. This was her first major motion film. They got like awards at Tribeca, and it's just like a sports movie. And what was sad is that it's almost like the studio decided that there can't be a male-centered comedy without sexism. And so they added it in. So this was his poster. MGM bought it, and they took it through their own studio productions. They changed the title, and they changed the poster to this. So this to this, which I would never see. That's the thing. My mom and I love sports movies. We're huge sports people. I've seen Rookie of the Year, Little Big League 1 billion times. I would watch this movie. I would totally watch this movie. But in assuming that there is no market in me and my mother, or even a man who would not want to fucking watch this, they made it this. Because a guy from MGM said, quote, "It doesn't pop," this poster. And he said, this is a direct quote, if you want to throw up. He said, "Clever doesn't sell, sex sells." And that's what I get a lot to the project is sex sells. Of course sex sells, but how are we selling sex? Who are we selling it for? That's my whole argument, and that's where the honesty comes back, where it's I want to know the truth, not just as it applies to the guy who made this fucking poster. So yeah, and then also just sort of touching really quickly with the Kavanaugh stuff that just happened, I also reshared these because people were trying to say that rape culture was not prevalent in the 80s. If you watch any 80s comedy, 90% of it is about non-consensual sexual instances.
Quests.
Like
Yeah.
Porky's, one of the most famous, I mean, literally. And then this one, Zapped. I mean, Scott Baio. He's not at fault for this, but let's just blame him.
He is.
And so look, this wasn't even something that would be questioned. Looking up a woman's skirt, even getting into her skirt without her permission. Even George Washington, the little perv, is in on it, you know. And then we have the reverse gaze, which these are all the like like trolls that I get, where they're like, "What about these 4 posters?" And the thing about the reverse gaze is that the reverse gaze actually proves the truth that I'm claiming, which is that this is a joke about the rule. It doesn't prove that the rule doesn't exist because the only reason this is funny is that the female gaze isn't itself a joke because it's not ever seen in an authentic way that's not supposed to be funny. So this is funny. Or if you look at this, when you do have a headless man, he is not passive sexually. He is active. Get a load of me. He's given agency. He is still giving as opposed to receiving because straight men are very, very scared. And then Magic Mike. People are like, what about Magic Mike? Okay, they gave us one movie.
Thing. My God.
Jesus Christ.
One movie.
Relax.
My God.
So in conclusion, we feel that honesty through comedy is mostly about point of view driven, because like I said, your point of view is always true. That's why comedy is truth, even if you disagree with it. That's why comedy can be hurtful when there are people doing it that you disagree with. That's why, like, if you go see this, like, MAGA comedy tour that they're doing, it would probably hurt when you see people in the audience laughing, because you're like, God, you're so stupid.
Because joined laughter is powerful for that reason. It validates
Exactly.
whatever idea is being presented.
It validates, yeah. Showing the hidden truth as opposed to telling it makes people listen more. It can be unfortunate, like we put ourselves out there as feminists, and a lot of times there'll be these guys who are like, yeah, I really like what you're doing. I see both sides. And you're like, you don't.
Thank you.
No, you don't. And the social validation that comes, because if we tell these jokes and nobody's laughing, there's not real power there. But if we tell these jokes and people are laughing, and Betsy DeVos is sitting in our show at the Kennedy Center just seething, you know, then we have real power, because then also it makes us feel less crazy. It takes the gaslighting back, especially as women, because we can sit there. The power I found in the last few years is that when I started comedy, you sort of inherently made jokes for a male-assumed audience. If you could make the men laugh, you could make the audience laugh, and you're sort of subconsciously catering to that. When you make a conscious breakaway and just decide, I'm going to make the jokes that I want, and if men don't come on board, then that's fine. And we're lucky enough to be living in a time where that's starting to be employable.
It's just starting. It's like
always-
the glimpse of like, maybe I'm open to it. We'll see.
We'll see. We have one spot for a woman. But people do, people always want to say this. It's a great time for women in comedy right now.
Is it?
Comparatively, sure, comparatively, now we are allowed to tell our truths, and this is the first time in our culture that we're seeing this movement in comedy for women to be able to be honest, and really honest. Not a version of honesty that's palatable to men, but just really honest how we talk amongst ourselves when men aren't there, and when men are there. And that's what we tried to do with our show, and that's what I tried to do with my project. So yeah, I think that's it for us. You have any closing remarks?
I think we covered it.
I think
We're
we
probably
covered it. We'll
over.
open up
Joel's
to
like,
I know, sorry. Do we have time for a Q&A?
probably not.
Probably not.
Joel's like, no,
Thank you guys
get
so
out
much.
of here. Thank you.